So the Rish is with us. Rish is from Solana Foundation. It is really cool to have you on this meetup. Let's proceed with your talk.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining. Here, let me grab my slides here. I'll make this pretty quick, and then happy to leave most time for questions at the end. So just today, gonna talk a bit at a high level about kind of some of the work that the Solana Foundation is doing in the AI space, and kind of like how we're seeing the landscape of what's going on so far. Yeah, like what the interesting areas and products to work on that we see are in some sense. Okay. Uh, okay. You guys, I think, can see my screen.
Yes, everything is okay.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Uh, so, um, oh, sorry, this is wrong presentation here. Let me just get the right one up. Copy. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Okay. Um, Yeah, so again, we'll be pretty brief and high level, happy to answer any questions after. But yeah, just I guess like a bit of a summary of kind of like what we're going to cover today. So first is just kind of covering what we've seen so far in terms of like what the market map looks like in the world of Solana and AI. And yeah, what are the exciting initiatives and things on the horizon that we ultimately see coming forward. I will also say at a high level, like I think how like many folks at the Solana Foundation think and believe, and which has really been true, is the best innovations have always been driven out of the ecosystem and never the foundation. And the foundation itself has never, has built like products and like tools for specific things. But if we think about the best stuff that consistently comes out, it's always like from the ecosystem team. So like I mean, very exciting to see like you all building in some capacity in the AI space in Solana, and yeah, actively support any work that anyone might be doing here. So I guess a brief recap on kind of the history of crypto and AI. In the early 2020s, you saw a handful of early infrastructure teams, mostly L1s. Transformers were like the scaling paradigm was taking off. You had already seen like pretty impressive performance with things like GPT-2, GPT-3. I think Stable Diffusion in the summer of August 2022 really kicked off the revolution of what people thought was possible with generative AI. And then obviously in December of that year, ChatGPT came out. It was a huge paradigm shift in what was going on in technology. There were a handful of teams that were building in the kind of AI and crypto space prior to that. Some notable projects are obviously BitTensor, Near, NumRAI, Jensen, Fetch. Like mostly L1s, but not much application focus. Some focus around kind of like compute marketplaces and stuff like that. But like I'd say it was very early. Starting in 2024 to like kind of Q1, Q2 of or really Q1 of 2025. So there was like almost like a 12 to 18 month period where AI is a predominant technology outside of blockchains and crypto. And you kind of see this convergence between like AI agents and meme coin cycles come together. And there was this huge amount of interest in people who were experimenting with different use cases, whether it was kind of like the GOAT Twitter account that was doing like backrooms where, like you had an LLM connected to Twitter accounts and like you had Twitter personas. Obviously, the Eliza team, I think, was like probably the biggest project to kind of like come up during the space, like built within Solana ecosystem. I think Shasir. Um, there was a lot of early experimentation. There was a lot of interest. There was a lot of excitement. But I think like, fundamental questions of like, what really are these agents? Like, what are they useful for? Like those like were not really being considered. I think like it was demonstrated interest in the technology, but like I would say it's like conservative to say like there wasn't much PMF in terms of products that came out of that period. And right now, I think we're in a space where very early primitives are being built, like especially in the agentic payment space. You have like suddenly a bunch of corporate interest from folks like Cloudflare, Visa, MasterCard, Google, who are working on specs with agents and stablecoins as kind of like, the ability of tool calling and like external servers like MCPs and A2As basically develop. And people are exploring new systems for how you might be able to facilitate these payments. And one of the ways to do this, obviously, would be with stablecoins. And something we've been thinking about quite a bit is like how do we make stablecoin performance on Solana? For payments, that's been a focus for the past 12 months. Like working with fintechs, payment companies, how do we make it cheap? How do we make liquidity global and easily accessible? Like now it's like, okay, what are the products that are relevant to, like make wrapping APIs with X402 if that's a system people are using, very easy to do. Self-funding wallets like should be very easy to do for developers to be able to pay for services. These are the things that we're thinking about. So just like a recap of some high-level statistics. Um, there's like close to a $30 billion market cap of AI tokens within crypto, which I mean like seems large, but like in the broader context of AI, like still there's almost 500 AI startup unicorns that collectively are worth over like close to $3 trillion. It's probably more. It's not even public companies as well. And in the world of AI, over $100 billion have been raised across like startups. I think like every week you see a new 30, 40, $50 million seed raise. In crypto, that number is about 7 billion, and in crypto and AI, it's a even smaller superset. 500 million is kind of an estimate of that. So there's a lot of growth potential. It's very early. Like crypto and AI is just a thumb of kind of like what's going on in broader AI. But I think it speaks to kind of like the opportunity that sits at hand. So like the relevant areas that we see kind of like really taking off here, one is kind of like in the agentic payment space, which I had mentioned. So it's like how do we support low cost instant settlement for agentic economies? So there are frameworks like Coinbase's X402 that has been built for this. Cloudflare has their pay per crawl implementation. They're working with 402 on top of. There are teams like Crossman and ATXP that are building the first principles products like around this. I'm sure as a lot of you guys saw, like last week, like 402 absolutely kind of like blew up as a narrative within crypto, like over the weekend as well. Like hosted our first like meetup around the event, last week. To be totally clear, all the activity right now is like 100% meme coins. So people very much speculating on the trend of the technology. Although like I'd say like longer term, I'd say like the utility of like a system in which like people are able to pay for microservices using stablecoins like very easily through like a wallet has like some fundamental utility, and that's why like I think like people are excited about it. So yeah, that's one piece of this. I think another piece of this is the on-chain compute markets. So there have been a number of teams that have done this, like crowdsourcing and marketplaces for on-chain GPUs. Aether, Render, Akash, like IONET, a bunch of them. I think like there are some teams who are working on pretty interesting stuff at the forefront of like how can you distribute these workloads to kind of like potentially fine-tune models or train models as well. Still very early. Think like, there's obviously like notable projects that have done this, but in terms of kind of like revenues and production, it's there's more to come. Third category, this is something I'm pretty excited about. I think the last presentation covered this a bit. This idea of like what do AI native crypto UX look like LLM embedded wallets, trading environments, consumer interfaces. Honestly, I think like agents demonstrated like some amount of interest for people using these kind of products like earlier this year. And like I think like basically there's going to be an opportunity at hand where there's a new set for these kind of things to come. And so like what does that look like? So, there are teams that are reimagining like a whole new like wallet interface, like using like AI like at the forefront of it. Teams like Phantom are working on like developing features and systems that make their wallet like very consumer friendly to use like with an LLM embedded at the heart of it. Just broadly speaking, I think like the next great consumer product in crypto is going to like use AI in a critical capacity. Like the unlock that Phantom did for meme coins, arguably like last year, some team is going to do in the sense of like, totally reshaping the way that people will interact with on-chain systems. Open source, I think, is another interesting opportunity. There's like obviously teams like Noose and Prime Intellect and Bagel that are working on various components of the open source stack from kind of pre-training work to, post-training RL. These teams kind of like vaguely have crypto on their roadmap. It's been hard to like the traditional model in AI has been like like come from like a notable research background, raise a lot of capital, you use that initial capital to fund open source work. And then that open source work like builds a developer community and like eyeballs, and then you raise more capital to build a like B2B enterprise product. That's the direction that like most open source AI labs have kind of gone because like there are like external forces of like constraints of capitalism against them. I think crypto could be an interesting way to like remunerate multiple contributors, and potentially create a more sustainable economic model for this. Again, I think it's very early, but like there are teams that are working on this both inside and outside the Solana ecosystem. Fifth, I think, is like data markets. So we've seen this with like teams like Grass and Fauna that are already public, and other teams like Pearl and Sapiens that I still think are pre-TEGE. AI data labeling is like one of the biggest markets right now in AI more broadly, and like there's reasons to believe why like teams could potentially do this like at a more efficient scale. Not using kind of like the centralized model that has been very popularized by the likes of Scale and Recor and Surge. Although like there are challenges building that market. And then yeah, frontier category, we're seeing things that are going on in like robotics and quantum and stuff like that. It's all exciting, but I'd say it's very early. And like the products there are still like kind of mostly in the research stage. So what do we care about? So I'd say like there's high level three initiatives that we really want to help push like Solana ecosystem teams to be able to crack. Again, like Solana Foundation, very differently in some cases from like other folks at other foundations. Like we're not in the business of believing that we're gonna build the best products ourselves. Like again, like we want to help drive and provide leverage for the ecosystem teams that are working on these things in the most high leverage capacity. First is Solana is a leader for on-chain AI use cases. That would be like kind of within the payments and on-chain compute sense. Um, Second initiative is kind of creating Solana environments for AI products. So like this is something I've been working with kind of like the OpenAI and Anthropic and Gemini teams on basically, how can we improve like code development and tool calling for both agents and like state-of-the-art models, like what GPT-6 will look like or what the next Claude model will look like to basically improve on like Solana related benchmarks. Again, like AI native crypto UX, I think like it'd be like great to kind of like see like some fantastic product like built. Like I mean, it's gonna happen. It's gonna come. There's gonna be a financialized AI application that really cracks this. Would love to see this happen within the Solana ecosystem. And then, yeah, I mean, just expanding the narrative beyond just like AI and crypto to like, more broadly AI in general. Like I think there are people in San Francisco who have been allergic to crypto for the past 3 years. And I mean, like still like don't love crypto, but are open to the ideas of kind of where it might potentially make sense. And yeah, like our idea is to work with these people like commercially to help, like ecosystem teams like pilot with these guys, like to like have foundation engage more like meaningfully with these sorts of folks. So that's like another initiative that we're really focused on as well. And so, yeah, I mean, our goal here, and what we want to align everyone who's working on AI in the Solana ecosystem is figuring out like how we win here. And it's like cracking this case in payments, creating the largest on-chain AI ecosystem in terms of like projects and founders and founder quality. There's already fantastic founders who are building in the AI stack in the Solana ecosystem, and there's going to be a network effect to that. Like if you're an AI founder coming into space, it needs to be obvious that Solana is the place that you want to build. Bridging the gap with traditional AI, and then finally, yeah, just increasing awareness of Solana, and potential applications of the technology outside of where it might exist. So yeah, thanks so much. That's kind of the presentation. Happy to stick around for a few minutes and answer a few quick questions if anyone might have any. But Daria, thanks for putting this together. And yeah, thanks to all the other presenters and everyone who's around.
So I have a question. In some ecosystems, other ecosystems like layer ones, there are some special grants for AI projects. Do you plan to set up some special program for AI projects in Solana?
Yeah, I mean the grants program has always existed within Solana. So like if you go to the solana.com website and look up grants, like there is like a open submission area where you can basically apply to grants. What's our approach to grants here? You know, there are many ecosystems that have huge treasuries that really frankly like don't know how to spend them in that like there's not much going on within their ecosystem. And so they'll, you know, like write huge checks for people to build products that aren't going to be used. That's like against our ethos of kind of like efficient capital and how we believe in kind of supporting the right projects in Solana. So the grants program exists. How we like to do it is we try to tie it towards milestones and outcomes of kind of like, you know, number of users, number of wallets, like to make sure that we're actively funding and spending Solana ecosystem dollars in efficient ways. And so, yeah, I'd say like the best approach for applying to grants, reach out to me, and we can chat about your project. And yeah, I mean, the idea of grants is not to be runway for projects infinitely. I think the largest outcomes in the Solana ecosystem space have like made grants look like a penny in the bucket, right? Like if you look at market cap of tokens that exist within Solana, that's where the real opportunity lies. Even like there have been a number of teams that I've been working with on kind of like developing X402 on Solana. You know, these teams have been working with me for months. We gave them very small grants. Like nominally, like maybe covered like 2 weeks of burn. But like the partnership is what matters. And like today, like I think like these teams are like, you know, sitting at a much more comfortable place after there's obviously the amount of interest and excitement. Like that's the opportunity of building on Solana. So yeah.
Thank you. Stanislav, can you proceed with your question?
Yeah, just a short one. Thank you,
Yeah.
Rish, for your presentation. What use cases do you see for AI built on top of Solana, but for Web 2 world, especially considering all this competition which is happening in Web 2 world primarily?
Yeah. I think that's a good question. So I'd say like what's interesting, it depends. So like the first is kind of like one is like it's pretty clear that so I think Shaw actually had like some good words about this. I think like people don't know how to frame what agents really are. Like it's been like this very like hot buzzword for a very long time, but like you know like what actually is an agent? Like I think most people do not know. One thing that is clear is like, you know, I'm in the camp that like it's not going to be like 2 years AGI and like there's no like productive economic activity that like people can produce. Rather, I think like agents and RL frameworks are going to be the scaling paradigm for like a long time. So building useful agents is going to be like a very relevant thing for all of us to kind of work on for a while. And how these agents are going to pay for systems is like another interesting piece of this. So obviously teams like Stripe are building payments protocols around something like this. You know, our interest here is like how can we make stablecoins a piece of this? Like something that traditional AI folks have been interested in as one. And the second is like obviously, you know, creating benchmarks, creating environments to test model improvements is like a very relevant thing. So like if you guys have checked out Solana Bench, like that's like another collaboration that, you know, like we're doing with AI labs on kind of figuring out how do we improve the performance of state-of-the-art models like within a Solana context. So yeah.
Thank you, Rish. Anton, do you have a question for Rish?
Yeah, Rishin, hello. We previously discussed the bench program with you. I would like to know if there are some news regarding that program, and do you want to continue releasing the different tools development from the third-party developers? And have you already received some application from the developers? And if yes, on which tools exactly? Thank you.
Yeah, so I think like we're probably like re-architecting the approach that we took to Solana Bench more specifically. Like the first use case was just on kind of like calling for the most popular SDKs. Like I know you guys were working on something on the validator side. I think our idea is like if there are open contributions to different kind of like functions like within whether it's like you know like validator related operations, DeFi like related transactions or stuff like that. We're open to the community kind of pushing those forward. Right now, like what we're trying to frame is like make sure that the work that is being done is actually going to be used like because there's two approaches to it, right? Like so either someone takes a open source model and will fine tune on top of one of these benchmarks and produces like kind of like minimally like not minimally but like improved model versus kind of what the state of the art is. But like long term, like our goal here is like, the work of large model building is going to be done by like these very large, well-funded labs. Like we want to make sure that like they have like the tool set to continue to push Solana improvements within models as like a piece of this progress. So like honestly, right now, most of the work is scoping like what would they find as relevant within this.